Good morning. Welcome to Shattering Myths, the program devoted to the largest segment of society, to those of you who, like me, have come to realize that all of the world's religious, political, economic, and military institutions are corrupt, that they are counterproductive. I am Yahowah. Our number, if you'd like to join us anytime over the next 2 hours, toll-free, 877-376-45. We're going to begin this morning continuing to contrast the difference between what Paul wrote and what God said, since they are actual opposites of one another. We have Kirk with us, and Kirk, I'd like to begin where we left off yesterday. Paul has said that he made a resolute stand against the disciples who had tried to subjugate them, had tried to essentially enslave them, and that it was required that he avoid this enslavement by them, subjugation by them, so that the truth of the liberation he was promoting would be made manifest to people. Now, the problem with that is, of course, is that the document that he's assailing, that he claims is subversive, that subjects people to cruel and unproductive treatment, is the Torah.
Right.
And the Torah was authored by the very God he says that he's representing. Of course, if you're rational, you would say that's an impossibility. But beyond that, in the Torah itself, the author of the Torah says that he is our liberator, not our enslaver, and he demonstrates that. A great example would be where he wrote the first of the 10 statements that he etched in stone. It begins, "I am Yahowah, your God, who delivered you from the crucible, out of the house of bondage and slavery."
Right.
Now, do you think that he repeats that? Because that line about how he is the one who released them from bondage in Egypt is repeated, must be repeated 50 times in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. One time I was struggling with it. I was saying, okay, that was an impressive feat, but come on, it's God against the Egyptian government and Egyptian religious establishment. That's not exactly a fair fight. Why is God, who's not the least bit braggadocious, he's really quite humble, why is God continuing to state this? It almost sounds like he's bragging. I freed you, from that. And it finally dawned on me after a while. I guess I would just slow on the uptick. Why do you think he repeats it some 50, maybe even 100 times? And it's the first statement he etched in stone. Why would he make that? Come on. Creating the universe is a much bigger feat. Authoring the DNA code for life is a much bigger feat. Why wouldn't he begin his 10 statements that he etched in stone with one of those things, as opposed with this one act that took place over the period of a handful of days?
Well, the heart of the whole matter is you're either going to walk to him and be free, or you're going to be enslaved by the world or Satan, or the collective group of them. So the whole thing they run through this constantly is, I am freeing. If you don't want to be free, then you go back to Babylon, go back to Israel, go back to Egypt, go back to whatever.
You're right.
But remember when we did Shaul, the king. King Shaul. He goes to great lengths to tell these people, this system that you're asking for is what I took you away from. It's going to enslave you. It's going to take your money away. It's going to take your children away. It's going to take everything, your crops away.
It's going to take you. It's going to rob you of your sons. It's going to rob you of your wealth. It's going to that whole diatribe. You've asked for this, and this is what you want. You can have it, free will and all. But you need to know, by choosing your own government, by choosing King Saul, this is what he's going to do to you. He's going to have you, he's not going to just take your sons away, he's going to kill them. He's not going to just steal your productivity, he's going to steal your fields. You're going to end up working for him. You'll be enslaved to him, essentially. And this is the nature of human government. He says, you do not want this, but, if you want it at least, and you should not want this, but if you want it, at least understand the consequence. So you're right. Half of the story of the Torah is God encouraging us to walk away from religion, from politics, from militarism, from human institutions, so that we can walk to and live with him in his home. And that is the story. As free and liberated individuals, no longer subservient, to human institutions. And so that liberation from man's religious and political institutions is half of the story. The other half of the story is that I want to be your father. I have a covenant that I want to design and participate with you. I want you to be part of my family, to inherit all that I have to give. So this is half the story. It's what that mankind enslaves through religion and politics and military approaches, and that God liberates. That's that's half the story. The other half of the story is, okay, so that's what man is doing. This is what God is offering, and that's the covenant. But those two things, and if you were to add a third, it would be the means that Yahowah has designed through his mikra that lead us from one to the other.
Right.
But that's the whole story. And so doesn't it make sense that you'd begin the story the same way the covenant begins? How does the covenant begin?
Walk away.
Walk away from Babylon. Walk away from your country. Walk away from these human entanglements.
Yeah.
And then trust and rely on me and walk to me and become perfect. Trust and rely on him means get to know who he is and what he's offering, and then trust and rely upon it, and then
study the term and keep them close to you so you don't go fall away again.
Correct.
So you know what's going on and what the real deal is in depth.
Right. So that's the reason that God emphasizes it. It's one of the two most important stories. Now, if you combine the invitations to meet with God, the Moed Mikra, Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Shavuah, the promise of the Sabbath, Teruah, trumpeting out the message, the Day of Reconciliations, and camping out with God on Sukkah. If you view that as the transition from one to the other, the means to go from the enslavement of man to the liberation of God, there are really only two messages in the entirety of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. Just two. And the first of them is man enslaves, God liberates. So what Paul is not inferring, what Paul is blatantly saying, is that those who would advocate the Torah, who Christians now call Judaizers, that those who advocate Yahowah's Torah guidance are enslaving, and that it is Paul's message, his gospel of grace, that is liberating. That's the crucible of the argument, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. And he's accusing Shimon and Jacob and Yochanan that they are preaching this terrible enslavement thing, and
through the Torah, right?
Through the Torah, and
and its covenant, of which circumcision, which is the fulcrum issue here, of which circumcision is the sign. It's what is the condition of the covenant. It's the sign of the covenant. And so you've got Paul specifically telling us that he is not only adverse to the guidance of the Torah and the conditions to participate in the covenant, but that that he is adverse to them because, from his perspective, the conditions of the covenant and the guidance that's provided in the Torah enslave.
But there's never been a freer people than those who followed Yahowah.
Correct.
There's never been a freer country today that is more beneficial to people than Israel or Israel. When ask any Muslim who's ever lived there.
Right.
Look at the response that IQ had when he went there.
Right.
I mean, my gosh, and I realize we appear to be free, but there's a whole swath of people in America that grew up here that don't feel very freed by it.
Right.
I was even shocked as a kid when I first realized, and I was a teenager, the house next door, my grandmother said, they're going to take that house away, and she didn't want it to be taken away because the people had moved out and lived up north and didn't want to pay the taxes on it. And I said, what do you mean taxes? And she said, well, property taxes, of course. And it dawned on me for the first time that you don't own anything in this country. If you don't pay the property tax, if you don't have that ongoing tax forever, that house does not belong to you.
Correct.
So it's still a rent. I mean, I don't care what you justify these taxes for.
Right. The government's claiming that they own the land. Yeah, you bought it, and you maintain it, and yet the government is taxing you to stay there, which means you're paying the government a rent for it as if they owned it.
Yeah.
That is correct.
So I mean, it's
and the government is a 40 to 50% participant in your business. Now, they didn't invest any money in it.
No.
They didn't provide any labor to make it better. They actually did things that make it more difficult. They burden you. They actually require you to do all of the work to pay the tax, to collect the taxes that are sent off to them. But they are a 40 to 50% partner in your business.
Yeah, they take 15%. Like even today, I'm paying 15% Social Security tax.
Right. And by the way, that money is not going into an account for you.
No.
No, it goes into the general fund. Spent. Right.
Right. So, absolutely. I mean, and if I hire somebody, I have to pay 7.5% of theirs.
Right. So if somebody owns and controls everything that you have, I mean your licenses for your cars, your property tax for your homes, your taxes on your businesses, aren't you a slave? Kirk, I suppose that it really all boils down to perspective. If your perspective, as is Pauline Christianity's, that the Torah is a set of draconian laws, mean-spirited laws that nobody could possibly obey, laws that no longer have any meaning or application in a modern society, and that the God who designed those laws is long since mitigated, moot, and that he was vengeful and wrathful, and it's lucky for us that we have a new God, and that we have a New Testament that we can believe in, that replaces that mean old God and his mean legislative testimony, his legalism. That's really, I mean, that is the perspective, but
that's what they preach.
But why not think about it for a moment? Why are you lugging around 3/4 of a book, where 3/4 of the book is from that mean God that created all that legalism that's counterproductive and can't save and enslaves? Why would you? Why even carry it around if you're going to have a New Testament that's totally and completely in conflict with it?
Well, we talked about this, I think, last Tuesday, but if you are disassociating from that, as Paul is advising us to do,
right,
and you have to obviously throw out the Torah and all the teaching and the guidance.
Right.
You have to throw out, and I don't mean to be redundant again, but let me go over it one more time. You have to throw out all the historical information that you couldn't find anywhere else, like who the heck the Palestinians are.
Or were.
Now, you throw out
all of creation, all of what we know about Abraham.
Think of it though. Well, of course, Abraham and Noah and Moshe, but even more importantly, it was only till recently that we had any concept of how accurate the science is about the creation story and Noah's flood and all.
The only introduction that's ever been provided humankind about who God is.
Yeah.
What he wants, what he's offering.
Now,
you got to throw that out too.
Yeah, and you have to throw out every prophecy because that's in the Torah.
Yeah, they're all in the Torah.
And then the killer to Christianity, the absolute dagger in the heart to Christianity becomes, what are you going to do with everything Yosha said?
Right.
When he quoted the Torah almost verbatim, and everything is related to the teaching of the Torah, then you have to throw out Yosha.
Yeah, then when Yosha's first public declaration is, do not think I have come to annul or do away with any aspect of the Torah. I've come to fulfill it. Not a single letter, not a single yod or tittle, a stroke of any one of the Hebrew letters is going to be done away with so long as the heavens and earth exist. You've got his first public declaration saying,
Yeah.
Don't create a religion based upon doing away with the Torah. That's nonsense, and certainly don't associate with me, because I didn't come to do that.
No. So what do you?
So now what? So now what?
You're left with the church, and all you can talk about is maybe hating Jews and Israel.
Yeah.
What else you got? I mean, what else you got?
But you've got the same thing that I said once in Prophet of Doom when I was critiquing Islam, where I said if Muhammad had created a religion out of whole new cloth, if he had said, that Allah was really a meteor, and that the black stone was a meteorite, and it was sent to us by a extraterrestrial god, and it had, we'll go to Joseph Smith here, and it had secret writing on it that I was the only one that was able to decipher, and more like Scientology. He created a religion out of whole new cloth. Yeah. Then you could judge that religion solely based upon whether or not what it said made sense, whether what it said was accurate. But Muhammad chose to dictate his Quran, saying that it confirmed the Torah. And then he claimed that all of the individuals mentioned in the Torah were Muslims, and that they had a relationship with Allah, and went as far as to say that Allah was the inspiration for the Torah, as well as the Psalms. But when he said that, and then recited a Quran that was the absolute opposite of the Torah and prophets, it was easy to show that he was lying. There was a 0% possibility that Muhammad was telling the truth when he claimed that which he was confirming, he was in fact completely and totally opposing. Well, the same thing is true with Paul. Absolutely, unconditionally. What he claims he was confirming, he is annulling.
Yeah.
So it was so easy for me to see clearly that the Quran was nothing but a pile of lies, when it, time and time again, did three things. Claimed its credibility based upon the Torah and prophets, stealing the names of the characters in the Torah and prophets, and bastardizing them to fit an Arab and Mecca-based mindset, and then writing material, ascribing material to God that was the antithesis of the God who revealed the Torah and prophets. And when you see things that are where everything is disjointed, it's in opposition, in a religious text that claims to be identical, confirming, it's so obvious that it's a lie that you just begin that way. You just, no problem. But that's not the case with Christianity. We grew up in it. And so while it also claims to confirm and to be validated based upon the testimony in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. And while its presentations of those characters is convoluted and twisted to serve its interests, and not consistent with the way those characters are presented to us in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, the contradictory message was harder to ascertain, to judge, because I was raised in it.
Yeah, because it is 1, 2, 3, just the same.
It is 1, 2, 3. It's just the same. And there is no rational person, no informed and rational person on the planet that can argue in favor of the credibility of the Quran, that is aware of what the Torah says, or that is aware of what the history of manuscripts regarding the Torah, and how within the Qumran collection we have copies of the first 5 books that date back to the 2nd and 3rd century BCE, and that every book thereafter of the prophets and the Psalms is 100% consistent with the Torah, and we have copies of those books now dating back to the 3rd century BCE, when the first written text of Islam claiming that the Quran confirms the Torah is dated to the 8th century, 1,000 years later. And they're in absolute and total conflict. You can't be informed and rational and hold out any argument in favor of the Quran and Islam being credible. But, my friend, the exact same scenario with the Christian New Testament.
Yeah. And it was also built the same way.
It built the same way.
With the military and torture.
Yes, yeah. In this case, it was mandated by and enforced by Theodosius, following Constantine, and the Empire of Rome, Imperial Rome, became the Holy Roman Empire of Christianity, imposed the same way. Exactly. And by the way, so it's also interesting is that the Christianity of Rome was an amalgamation of the pagan religions of the current the people who initially promoted it, and of the cultures that they conquered. The same thing's true with Islam. Islam is the religion of Qusay, a pagan Arab generations before Muhammad. Every one of the pillars of Islam, every one of their holidays, every one of their pillars, every one of their traditions is based on the pagan past of Arabia, just as Christianity grew out of the religions of Babylon and Greece and Rome and Egypt.
Yeah, nobody's creative. It seems to be it's obviously satanic because he's not creative. They just follow the pagan thing over and over and over again. It's the same government and religion tied together with the military to enforce it, and an economic scheme that handicaps you to begin with. And I mean, the parallels are so in your face. To not see it is just to be blind. Yeah. I mean, so you have to just cover up your ears and say, no.
Right, but it's extraordinarily easy to be blinded when you've been indoctrinated with any culture. I mean, I chose, I guess, to be blinded by Christianity. I mean, I was more into it than I think you were as an ordained ruling elder and an evangelist.
Well, I put my money where my mouth was. I mean, that's my crime.
You funded it.
I funded it.
Yeah.
Because I thought that's what God wanted, so that's what He wants. That's good enough for me. So stupid brain. Yeah. But
it gets right back down to this. This is the line that Paul has drawn in the sand. He has said that the disciples that Yahowah picked, that he communicated with, that were advocating him as the living embodiment of the Torah, him as someone who observed the Torah, that the witness of those disciples meant absolutely nothing to Paul. So when you have now Paul, thus far in this letter, drawing a line in the sand saying that he was wholly opposed to circumcision, which is the sign of the covenant, and therefore against people participating in the covenant, and that the witness of the disciples is for naught. Therefore, 100% of what we know about Yahowah matters not. And that the old system, as he began this letter, the old system, which would be the Old Testament, he equated with pornography. All you have now, all you have now as a Christian, all you have is Paul. Don't pretend that you had anything else, because you don't. You just got Paul.
No, you either have to reject Paul, and then you have to,
Yeah. I mean, your choices are.
I have nowhere to go. I'm in a corner now. You're putting me in a corner. I have to admit it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If you want to be honest, then you have to disavow Yahowah, the Torah, the prophets, and Psalms, Yahowah, and all four of the biographical accounts regarding him. You have to forego all of that. So everything that is known about Yahowah and everything that was communicated by Yahowah, you have to forego if you're going to accept Paul. And if you accept Paul and are a Christian, then you are opposed to Yahowah, and you are opposed to Yahowah, and you're opposed to the Torah.
And you've discounted everything that these so-called guys with a reputation have offered to you by writing it down. The witnesses are no good, whether they be Yahowah or Shimon Kefish.
Yeah, and keep in mind, there is nothing left of the Christian religion without Paul. No, because Yahowah was, in his every word and deed, was wholly opposed to what has become Christianity. So you got nothing left. You've just got Paul, and he is the most demonic, mean, deceitful scumbag who probably ever lived.
Well, he's the only one called out, and he knew who Muhammad was too. So, but Yahowah calls him out, so that should tell you.
Yeah, the reality is that we do need because of the way that the culture was conceived and the way that the beast that was the Roman Empire and that became the Roman Catholic Church, the way that it was empowered to deceive people. I agree with Yahowah that we really needed to have Paul called out. And I agree with Yahowah, who warned us about Paul when he talked about the wolf in sheep's clothing, when he said that one will come in his own name and you will accept him, and even though I come in my Father's name and you reject me. When he said, if you see one, claiming in the wilderness to see me, do not follow him. When he said that, there are those who will come and claim that I am the Christ, and they will mislead many. All of these. When he said, to the Ephesians, I'm glad for you that you did not accept the false apostle.
Right.
All of those are direct warnings against Paul. So I'm glad, I agree with him, that it was appropriate for Yahowah to warn us about Paul. It was appropriate for Yahowah to warn us about Paul and call him the plague of death by name. As for Muhammad, there's a lot said about the religion of submission and its terrorist signature throughout the prophets because of its influence on Israel in the last days. Yeah, so there's a lot said, but there is no.
He didn't talk a lot about it.
Right. Well, no, but the point is, he did not call out Muhammad by name to condemn him, like he called out Paul by name to condemn him. Quite frankly, because there is no excuse for being a Muslim. I mean, you have to. You have to be either poorly informed
or enslaved
or irrational to be a Christian. You've just got to be flat out moronic to be a Muslim. I mean, there isn't a thought going on in your brain. You are just you are a sad sack of an individual as it relates to your ability to gather evidence and consider it rationally. So there's no excuse for being a Muslim. It's the world's most vicious, dumbest. It's to say it's the most vicious and dumbest and deadliest, most destructive religion for sure. Whether or not if you just use dumbest, it is dumber than Scientology or Mormonism. I'm not sure, but
it has a horrible tinge to it too. I mean, you have to in your gut, something has to go wrong in your insides to follow Muhammad. The murder and the killing and the torturing.
Oh yeah, believing that a pedophile and rapist and terrorist and slave trader and kidnapper and avowed liar was God's spokesperson. There's something seriously wrong with your character. Yeah, you have to be dead inside, and to believe that the creator God of the universe spends all of his time in hell torturing those that don't surrender to him. I mean, there's just no excuse. There is no excuse for being a Muslim, so there's no reason. I mean, God didn't have to warn us about every unique human religious contrivance when so many of them are just brain dead. So here we are, Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the place that I think Paul wants us to be in. I know we're in the place that Yahowah wants us to be in.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we're in the place that Yosha told us we would be in. It's a place where we need to choose.
Yeah.
Paul was constantly harping on the idea that to rebel against him was condemning, and that you had to choose him, not the disciples.
Right.
And certainly not the God of the Old Testament. That it was him or them. That's where he wants us to be. But it's also where God wants us to be. Him or them. Who are you going to choose?
Well, that's easy for me. I'm going to choose Yahowah. But he says I cut. He uses karate.
Right.
Cut. And he always is all about separation. It'll divide your family, it'll divide your friendships, it'll divide countries.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, it's all about separation, about cutting, karat.
Separate two or separate from.
Right. The covenant was cut, which means that you're going to be on one side or the other.
Yeah.
And how many times, I think there's at least 3 times, that Yahowah said, I did not come to bring peace, but instead division. I'm not trying to reconcile a relationship with religious entities and with political enemies, entities and the like. I'm not trying to have wholesale integration. I'm not trying to spread this gospel of love. No, I came to bring division. I came to create separation. And then he went on to details. He says, fathers are going to be separated from sons and daughters from mothers. And he went on to explain that separation is going to cut right to the family. And he said it 3 times. Don't you think there was a reason that he would have repeated that statement 3 times? And yet everybody has him as bringing this gospel of love, that he was just so loving and so accepting and so accommodating. No, he said, I came to bring division.
And it has to be because assume that you brought into your home some jerk who just said, fine, okay, I'll come with you. Mm-hmm. But he brings all his same thinking with him.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And then you empower this guy. Remember, you're going to empower this guy into a unbelievable status, and you can't get rid of him.
Right.
Why you want him in your house?
Yeah, really.
It's like Paul says they're trying to enslave me. Who would want the jerk as a servant in his house? He's a liar. He's a two-faced jerk. He's a thief. You can't trust him on nothing, and he's possessed. Well, I wouldn't want to enslave him or put him in servitude. I'd give him a bus ticket out of town.
Yeah. And yet the reason that people believe the likes of Paul is that he claimed that he was inspired by, taught by, and speaking on behalf of God. Just like Muhammad.
They don't know what he is. Yes,
right.
Only proves they don't know a thing about what God actually said, what Yahowah said.
Correct. Same claim that Muhammad made.
Yeah.
And so if you don't know who God is or what God said or what he is offering, I guess it's easy to be fooled in that regard. But, it's like when Muhammad claims that he speaks for God, and he comes up with a bogus name and never gets the right name, ever once. He violates, and he has his God violate, all 10 of the 10 statements that Yahowah etched in stone. He doesn't mention any one of the 7 mikra, which are the heart of the Torah. He never speaks of the covenant. And he has his God spend all of his time in the place that's of hell, which is the place of separation from God, where God cannot go. If you're the least bit informed, you say, the story that he's telling, he's just using the name Abraham and David and Noah and Adam to steal the credibility that that Yahowah gave to them and that Yahowah has because of them, and he's trying to steal that credibility. It's the exact same thing with Paul. He will speak as if he is speaking for Yahowah, but he never once quotes him.
Yeah.
Never once. And so, he's, I guess, credible to many because he claims that he was chosen by God. And who are we to say that he wasn't? Well, Yahowah and Yahowah tell us he wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that puts us in pretty good grounds to say that he wasn't. Yeah, put it in darn good company. And that's the company I'm going to stay in.